Hello there, my name's Nick Dale from Nick Dale Photography, and I'd like to talk to you today about making money from photography. So, how is that possible? It is a difficult question, but I'll do my best to give you a few answers. I've been a wildlife photographer professionally since 2013, and I certainly don't have all the answers, but I can give you a few ideas. So let me take you through my own career first of all. I started off when I was about 15 when I bought a camera that was a film SLR called the Chinon CE4, and I was very excited about it. So excited in fact that I ended up taking 2 rolls of 36 exposure film in my front room. In fact, I talked to my mother about it. I thought about going to the London College of Printing, doing a course there and maybe turning professional. And you know what my mother said? She said, "Well, you can always take it up later as a hobby." Very practical, my mother. So that was that for 30 years. Fortunately, 30 years later, I received a random invitation by email to go on safari, and I jumped at the chance. I'd always wanted to go to Africa, but I never had. I'd been saving it for my honeymoon, and that hadn't quite worked out. So I bought myself a bridge camera, which was a kind of a compromise between a compact and a DSLR. Had a very good zoom, but it didn't have a very big sensor. Once I went on the trip, though, I was definitely hooked, and I had camera envy when I saw 1 or 2 of the other DSLRs that members of the group had brought with them. So my 3rd and 4th cameras were DSLRs. I bought a Nikon D800 and a Nikon D810, so I had those for a few years as I travelled the world. I went to all kinds of places. I went to Venice for a day trip once, and I've been to around 25 countries in the world, taking pictures mostly of wildlife, but sometimes of the architecture, the people, landscapes, and so on and so forth. Well, I now have replaced the D800 with a D850, but I still have the 2 camera bodies, which is very handy. And I try to sell my work through various sources, which includes microstock sales, exhibitions, talks, compositions, and various other things. I was even a resident photographer for 4 months in Tanzania and Kenya in 2019, when effectively I was teaching photography and taking pictures in exchange for free board and lodging, which was a great opportunity. So, what do you need to do first? Well, so the big question, how can I make money out of photography? And the answer is, I think, simply try as many avenues as you can. So that doesn't mean to say that every avenue will work or will lead to some monetary reward, but you can always give up. You can always redirect your energies to something that seems to be more promising. But here are some of the options. So originally, back a few years ago, stock agencies were the major way in which photographers would make their cash. So these were agencies that simply took your pictures and tried to distribute them to news organisations, magazines, and other creative clients. Now, stock agencies still exist, and I myself have a stock agency called Design Pics, which is a Canadian outfit, and I give them first choice of my images. So whatever they want, they keep, and I have an exclusive 5-year deal with them, which means that I can't then use those images with other agencies. However, I make more money out of Design Pics than I do out of all my other microstock agencies. So what's the difference between stock and microstock? It's essentially the average price that they charge. So stock agencies can charge hundreds of dollars for an image. Used to be more in the old days, it's slightly less now, but microstock agencies charge a lot less. So you might get 25 cents, 33 cents for an image. Everything tends to be priced in dollars, but that's very little. So it's volume versus value, essentially. Either you get one big sale, or you get hundreds, and I mean hundreds, of smaller sales. So I used to have microstock deals with maybe about 25 agencies, and now it's down to about 9. So the major ones are iStock, which is now part of Getty Images, Shutterstock, and Adobe. However, there are lots of them. So it's just a question of trying them out and seeing what return you get. Most of these agencies are non-exclusive, so you can simply try them out for a few months. If you don't get any return, then you can always bid them. So what I usually do is I have a weekly upload of 100 images just to keep my name top of mind for the creative directors or the ad guys who are looking for images. So I generally sell maybe, I don't know, half a dozen a day. I've sold around 12,000 in total, and I haven't made a huge amount of money out of it, but probably around 40% of my earnings comes from microstock and stock agencies. Now, one of the other things you can do is to have an exhibition. Now, I thought initially that to have an exhibition would be incredibly expensive, but I just happened to be at an event at my tennis club when I met someone who had just had an exhibition herself, and she recommended a venue in Wimbledon which was only charging about £70 a week. Now, £70 a week, that's almost throwaway money. So I thought, right, I need to do this. So I talked to them. I ended up having a 2-week exhibition, and in the end, I think I sold around 10 prints for over £1,000, and that was how I got started. Now, as time went on, I thought I needed to have a bigger canvas, as it were, so I decided to look for a different gallery, and I ended up with a couple of different galleries, one on the King's Road, 508 King's Road, another one in Pimlico called Lumi Arts, or Luminaire Arts. And I've had exhibitions at both of those. I've also participated in group exhibitions and various fairs, like the Parallax Art Fair, various events like that. I didn't find that the fairs worked out terribly well. I only sold one picture while I was there, and that was to the mother of the artist next to me. But it's worth trying, as I say. So now, when I have an exhibition, it's actually quite expensive because it's on the King's Road or in Pimlico, but it does mean that I can charge more for my images. So I used to charge something like £80 for an image, and now I'm up to around £3,000 for a big one. So big difference. But it does mean that it's high risk, high return. If you don't make a sale, you lose your deposit effectively. So it might cost you £1,000, £1,600 for a week, but you lose that, and you don't have any revenue to match against it. On the other hand, if you do make a sale, then you might win big. But it's a fine line. So one sale means a successful exhibition. No sales means a catastrophic failure. So it's up to you. One other thing you can do is photo shoots. Now, I'm a wildlife photographer, which makes photo shoots a little bit tricky. There aren't many people out there who will send you to Africa to take pictures of bears or lions or whatever it happens to be. But it is possible. And also, you can always compromise and say, well, okay, I'll do the occasional wedding, or I'll do a shoot for a friend or something along those lines. You just need to develop a rate card, if you like, and try and make a few £100 here and there. I haven't done many shoots in my photographic career, probably only about half a dozen or so, but it's usually been for friends or for a couple I knew who got married, and they've generally gone pretty well. Everyone's been happy, so that's good. But I haven't really poured any marketing expenditure into it, and I do want to focus on wildlife, which is a slightly different kettle of fish. Now, one thing I have done in my life is teach, and I've taught all kinds of things, from skiing, golf, to English, maths, French, Latin, all kinds of subjects. So teaching photography was a natural extension to my photographic career. It's also a good way to earn some money. So at the moment I charge £70 an hour or £250 for the whole day, and occasionally I get employed to do a photo workshop. So I've done one at Putney Library to help out a friend, and also I did a couple at Canary Wharf in conjunction with their annual wildlife competition. So they're great fun. I enjoy teaching, and I generally enjoy helping people. So that's the kind of thing that is a win-win for me. I get paid and I do something I love. Now, that may not be your thing, but it's at least an opportunity. There are lots of people who need help with photography. It's a complicated hobby, very expensive hobby. And there are a lot of people who have very expensive cameras but don't quite know how to work them. And when I was resident photographer in Africa in 2019, there were plenty of people who came up to me and asked me questions about how to use their cameras, which they should really have known. In most cases, they thought they were going to have time to practice before they went on safari, but in the end, life got in the way and they didn't have a chance. So their safari turned from being a holiday into a getting to know your camera exercise, which is a shame. So there's certainly demand for it. You just have to ask yourself whether you're a natural coach. What else? Equipment hire. I came across this quite by accident, but there are one or two companies out there that can allow you to rent out your camera equipment when you're not using it. Now, I don't know about you, but in my case, my camera equipment usually sits in my room gathering dust between trips. So I thought this is a great chance to sweat my assets, so to speak. So I came across this company called fatlama.com, and I ended up putting on maybe 3 or 4 lenses, a couple of camera bodies, and a few accessories. And lo and behold, I gradually received a few offers to rent the equipment out. And 1 month in particular, I managed to make about £1,500, which is great. So it is quite lumpy. I haven't had a few rentals recently, but it's always there, bubbling away in the background, and you never know when somebody might rent something for 50 quid a day or something. You can also enter competitions. So this is, believe it or not, a way of making money. Some photography competitions have prizes, not all of them, but some. There are lots of digital certificates out there, which aren't really worth the paper they're written on, but equally, there are quite a few competitions that have payment in kind. It might be sponsored by a provider of tripods or something, so you might win a tripod, or you might win some other kind of kit. I've won various things, including an iPhone telephoto attachment and a couple of pairs of binoculars, which is nice, and I get free access to 1 or 2 clubs and 1 or 2 subscriptions after winning competitions. There are also competitions, of course, that offer cash prizes. There are fewer of them, and it tends to be quite difficult to win those sums when you've got international competition to compete against, but they are out there. So I've certainly made a few £100s out of competitions over the years. And it's also nice to put on your electronic CV, so to speak. You can say you're an award-winning photographer or an international award-winning photographer if you want to, and that probably gets you in the door with a few people. I've also done a few talks. When I was at school and when I was at Oxford, I did quite a bit of acting, so I like being on stage, so to speak. And giving a talk to a photography club or a library is a good opportunity to do just that. Usually I give a slideshow of images I've taken, and the theme is usually something like one of the trips I've done, or wildlife photography in general, or photography in general. And I've often given how-to guides, how to become a photographer, or how to edit your images, and so on and so forth. So the theme might differ, but generally it involves going on to a club, spending maybe a couple of hours down there, showing a few slides, and giving a talk that lasts for an hour and a half plus questions. I usually charge about £100 plus expenses for those talks, so it doesn't make a huge amount, but it's nice to get out there, and I enjoy them, so it's good fun. One other thing I've tried doing recently is what we call affiliate deals. So affiliate marketing involves plugging someone else's product and getting, in return, some kind of commission. So I've done it in the education market, because I'm also a private tutor, and I've done it in the photography market. So on my website, for instance, I have links to Digital Rev, which is a Chinese manufacturing company. I've also got a link to CameraCal, which is a British camera calibration company, and 1 or 2 other things. And the point is that you can usually arrange a deal whereby people who click on that link will get a special deal, so money off or something for free, and in exchange you get a commission of 5% or 10% or something. So again, it's something worth trying. If you're lucky, then you might make a few quid out of it. And if not, well, at least you'll help a few mates. The job I did as a resident photographer in 2019 was a huge coup. It was really a changing point in my photographic career, and I was very lucky to end up doing that job. What happened was, in late 2018, I happened to read an article in an online magazine about a photographer who'd managed to get 365 free nights accommodation out of safari lodges in Africa in exchange for taking pictures. And I immediately thought, well, I could do that. So I ended up Googling safari lodges in Tanzania and Kenya and sending out about 50 emails. Within about 2-3 weeks, no more, I had 17 invitations to stay for free. And the deal was a kind of barter arrangement. I suggested that I would teach photography to their guests, but I would also give them a copy of all the images I took when I was over there, and in exchange I would get free board and lodging, and I'd be able to go on all the game drives. So in the end, I happened to work for And Beyond and Cotters. So And Beyond had various safari lodges in Tanzania, so I worked at 3 of those, and then Cotters had a camp in Kenya, so I worked there for a month. It was a great experience. I met some fantastic people, both the staff and also the guests. There seems to be a kind of self-selection amongst safari guests. The people who end up going on safaris tend to be well-educated, intelligent, cultured, interesting people with a love of the outdoors, adventure, and of course wildlife. So they're generally great company. Just going out on game drives with them was a pleasure in itself, even before the photography aspect. So it was a great opportunity, and I'd certainly like to carry on doing that kind of role in future. I've had problems recently because of the coronavirus lockdown. I was prevented from going to Namibia on one of these deals for a couple of weeks. I would still like to go to a couple of places in Kenya. I'm in negotiations at the moment. It all depends on what happens. But it's certainly a great way of getting abroad and giving yourself a chance to take pictures of the wildlife for very little expenditure. All I had to do was to pay for my international flights, and I think one local flight, and the other local flight was paid for by one of the safari companies, which was great. And then the rest of the time I could simply spend my time teaching and taking pictures, which is what I love. Finally, photography trips are an opportunity to make money for a lot of wildlife photographers. What counts as a photography trip? Well, you would probably be leading a group of half a dozen people, maybe more, to anywhere in the world, specifically on a photographic safari. So there are a number of wildlife photographers who do that. Tin Man Lee, Paul Goldstein, Andy Skillin. I've been on a few trips by 2 or 3 of those. And the advantage you get as a punter is that you get very good advice on your photography, and you get problems solved very easily, and you also get taken to the best spots. So Paul Goldstein is great for taking you to the very best place to see the wildlife, whether it's polar bears in Spitsbergen or cheetah kills in Kichechi Bush Camp, doesn't matter. And he's also a great raconteur. Photography trips can be a great way of making money if you can get the bums on seats, and that's the key thing. So a lot of people do it to supplement their photographic income, but I'm not quite at that stage where I'm a big enough name in the photography world to attract enough people. So I've tried to run about 5 or 6 trips over the last few years, and none of them has actually got off the ground because I couldn't get enough people to book, which is a shame. I'll keep trying, and it's certainly a good way of raising some funds if it gets off the ground, but that's the crucial caveat. So I spoke to Tin Man Lee a few days ago, and he was talking about making 25 grand out of a trip that he had led. So with that kind of money at stake, it's worthwhile persevering. Anyway, That's my guide to making money out of photography. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's useful to you. Good luck.